Hey guys, Minecraft Killer 444 here. I'm gonna step out here for a minute. Wow, I'm breaking stuff. I'm gonna step out here for a minute and make a quiet video. Actually, I'm gonna go back in here because I don't want to disturb my neighbors. But I'm making this quiet video because I've been stewing on one of the latest episodes of Better Call Saul for a while. Because Better Call Saul has been great this season. It's been very good. But there's something that really has kind of irked me about the last episode, which is Gus versus Lalo, right? The whole show is, my wife is smiling in the corner because I think she knows where I'm gonna go, where I'm going with this video. But that fight was pretty. It was cool because the whole season and the whole last two seasons were building up to this confrontation with Gus and Lalo. Gus, of course, being the villain that we've known since, season 2 of Breaking Bad. He's been this iconic character. He's been really a defining villain for television and movies since his creation. The poor bastard, whatever the actor's name, Giancarlo Esposito or something like that, he's been playing the same character in every movie since, right? Basically been typecasted as the same guy. And so many villains in so many different TV shows have tried to be Gus Fring, because Gus Fring just has this amazing presence, and it's a combination of just a fantastic actor and a fantastic director, or fantastic direction, because obviously the episodes are directed by different people, but and just great writing all around. Part of what makes Gus so great is the relationship between Gus and Walt, though. So in Better Call Saul, we haven't been seeing the best of Gus, really. Some people on Twitter have been saying they kind of fumbled the bag with Gus, and I would kind of agree with that to a certain extent, because I don't think that Gus has been extremely well explored in Better Call Saul, but he is still there, and he is still doing a great job, and he is still being a great character. It's just that the show has been focused on. The show doesn't have that type of laser focus that Breaking Bad had. It's more of a sprawling story about various different characters, whereas Breaking Bad was very much focused on its core cast and their journey, kind of Walter's journey. Walter's really the driving force of that show, and his relationship with Gus and the impending conflict that plays out between them is part of what makes Gus so fascinating. It's like Light and L from Death Note, right? Their relationship is what makes that show so great. So when Death Note eventually removes L, the show kind of takes a downward spiral somewhat, because you lose that fantastic relationship. But anyways, in Better Call Saul, they introduce Lalo, who I would compare, he's like a Hisoka type character. If anyone's seen or read Hunter x Hunter, there's this type of character, which is a character that never loses. A character that is frightening because they never lose, and they know they never lose. So Lalo, throughout the entire show, just doesn't lose. And he just keeps upping the ante every episode. He's horrifying, and he gives that actor, I don't know the actor's name, but he just gives one of the best performances in this whole Breaking Bad series, Breaking Bad, Better Call Saul, or any spinoff, because that guy is just so good as Lalo. And every scene Lalo's in, there's this palpable sense of tension and fear, and it's just great. So seeing these characters interact, it's also great because Lalo and Gus go about things very differently. Gus is behind the scenes. That's what makes Gus kind of scary, is he's behind the scenes. He can get in your face and be tough if he has to, but for the most part, Gus is a smart, planning individual. He uses his mind, whereas Lalo is more quick and nimble, like to quote the DK rap song, and he's more physically powerful. But he's also there are two different types of smart. There's instinctual smartness, and then there's thoughtful planning smartness, right? And those archetypes are great to clash, because you've got Gus's kind of great genius planning and behind the scenes manipulation versus Lalo's extremely quick-witted, laser-focused, tight ability to escape situations, which is how he's able to survive the ending of season 5 when he escapes all the gunfire. And from then on, we get to see some of the best of Lalo, because he goes to, like, Germany, and he's going around, and he's sneaking around, and he's doing all this evil shit completely undetected. But it's also awesome because, again, Lalo never loses. And so you're building to this conflict that the two of them are going to get in, and I feel like the conflict is a big letdown. I feel like the last episode, Lalo versus Gus, is quite a letdown because it ruins aspects of both of those characters, and it doesn't stay true to what we like about both of those characters. And to give you an example of what I mean, I'm going to compare this to the Hunter x Hunter manga. So if you've read Hunter x Hunter, this is massive spoilers, so I am about to spoil my favorite, like, work of fiction ever here, but I'm going to give you an example of what I'm talking about, because I think it's an interesting thought experiment to compare the two. In Hunter x Hunter, there is two characters somewhat similar to Gus and Lalo, which is Hisoka and Chrollo. Chrollo is the leader of a crime organization, and he's more behind the scenes. He is very strong, but he's, like, in the middle of strength when it comes to the Phantom Troop. He's not stronger than the rest of the people he leads physically. He's not, like, the strongest, like, epitome of strength or anything. He's just really smart and a genius leader. He's tried to create the Phantom Troop in a way so that they don't need him, but the troop themselves have admitted to really kind of needing Chrollo to be able to function to max capacity. Because without Chrollo, they just don't work as well without Chrollo. Anyways, Hisoka, on the other hand, is the opposite. He's much more in your face. He is manipulative, and he is able to kind of do, like, quick things like that. But again, it's very similar to what I just described with Gus and Lalo. What makes Hisoka's strength so great is his ability to be quickly in situations and quickly find the best way to exit and the best way to survive. Whereas Chrollo is more good at taking a step back and creating scenarios. So when we finally get these two characters fight, Hisoka throughout the entirety of Hunter x Hunter never loses once, ever. The only few times we see him lose are Machi rejects him, she doesn't go on a date with him, and Gon manages to punch him in the face. But in both of those situations, Hisoka just kind of brushes it off because he's like, whatever. And that's part of why Hisoka can never lose, because even when he does lose, much like Lalo, it's just, whatever, I win. And that's what makes Hisoka so terrifying. So when Hisoka and Chrollo fight, there's this really big scenario of who's gonna win, just like Gus and Lalo, who is gonna win. And what ends up happening is it stays very faithful to both characters. Hisoka, for really the first time in the entire show, loses to Chrollo. But Chrollo only wins because Chrollo created a scenario that he could not lose. There was no way Hisoka would be able to win that scenario. If you've never read the manga, and I'm sorry for spoiling this for you, but really just read that fight. Because it's really intelligent. It's not like your typical anime fist fight. It's really an intelligent use of the creative power system that show made up. And it gives you... it doesn't feel like a fight. It feels more like the inevitable. Like, Chrollo says to Hisoka, you know you can't win this fight, and Hisoka still says it's worth trying, because admitting defeat would be even more pathetic than losing, right? So Hisoka goes along with the rest of the fight, and he tries his hardest, and Hisoka does everything almost perfectly, but there's just no way to win. And don't get me wrong, if Chrollo made a mistake, he could have lost. Like, he had to do everything in succession perfectly. He had to really perfectly be able to pull off all the tricks he did. But Chrollo was never going to fail at doing that. Chrollo was never going to fail at pulling off those tricks because he's planned it out in his mind so perfectly. That is an example of how you have two characters go to battle and don't undermine either character. You see both of their strengths. I feel like Gus versus Lalo does a huge disservice to both of them because Gus is a fucking idiot. He goes to the place where he knows Lalo is going to be, alone with very few guards, and well, Lalo's there, and oh no, he's gonna beat me, you know, and he gets put at gunpoint. He gets put at gunpoint, is at Lalo's mercy, and he just happens to, like, flip a wire that shuts the lights off and run to the back and just so happens to beat Lalo in a shooting fight. It doesn't make much sense, in my opinion, because Gus would never put himself in that situation. The Gus from Breaking Bad would never put himself in that situation, even against Walt. Walt had to find the exact right spot to be able to get under Gus's skin, right under Gus's nose, to be able to beat Gus. It was an exact, perfect situation, and it required and Walt needed Jesse's help and the other dude's help. Not gonna spoil it because my wife hasn't even seen it yet, but you guys have seen Breaking Bad, you guys know what I mean. He had to enlist help of multiple people to even get that plan to work properly. So I feel like that was a way to show, that was a good example of two characters coming to blows and Walt winning in a satisfying way. But Gus shooting Lalo, beating Lalo, there's no way Lalo would lose a gunfight. That undermines Lalo's character. It would be like if Hisoka got into a fist fight with Crollo and Crollo just pounded Hisoka in a fist fight. That wouldn't happen. Hisoka is strong. That's what makes Hisoka's character cool, is he is so good at that stuff. If you can just beat him in a fist fight, that undermines some value, which is why that never happens in Hunter x Hunter, because it would make Hisoka less scary and make him less of an interesting character. And it makes Lalo less of an interesting character by the fact that Gus can just bang and shoot him. That's not cool. That's not good. That's not impressive. And again, it makes Gus look like a fucking idiot. And it just also makes Gus look like, I think Gus should have created a scenario that Lalo couldn't have won. And I think Lalo should have done the best he could, but still failed that scenario. Because that would have made more sense for their characters. And I just feel like by having Lalo and him get into a shooty gunfight, and Gus kind of outsmarting Lalo by kicking the light post, it's just not cool, and it's not good, because again, I don't see how Gus, in his olden age, you know what I mean? I just don't see how Gus would have been able to do it. I like that Lalo dies with a smile on his face. I think that was cool, but I just don't. I think when you're creating a show, you should try to stay true to your characters, and I feel like it doesn't stay true to either character to have it go down like that. So that's my opinion. What do you think? What do you think? About Gus versus Lalo?
I don't know.
What are your thoughts?
I don't know.
What are your thoughts?
I don't know.
What are your thoughts? What are your thoughts? What are your thoughts? Post a comment post a screenshot below.